Jason and Jordan Carter stepped into the Ivory Lounge, a luxurious bar in Washington, D.C. As Jason and Jordan sat at the bar, two men lurked in the background, their behavior just a little off. They were dressed well, but something about them didn't fit. Their suits were slightly wrinkled, their collars loose like they weren't used to wearing them. One of them, a thin man with slicked back hair, kept darting his eyes around the room. Every few seconds, he glanced at the entrance, then back to his drink, his fingers tapping nervously on the bar. The other, a stockier guy with a scar along his jawline, kept shifting in his seat, checking his watch as if he was waiting for someone. Before we dive into this intense story, make sure to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like button if you believe in justice, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Now, get ready for a suspenseful ride filled with twists you won't see coming. Let's get started. The atmosphere was alive with soft jazz music, clinking glasses, and quiet laughter. Jason, a federal prosecutor, adjusted his suit and checked his watch. He was always precise, always calculated. His twin brother, Jordan, a college football coach, was his complete opposite, relaxed, fun-loving, and always cracking jokes. "Man, you work too much," Jordan said, nudging Jason as they reached the bar. "And you talk too much," Jason replied with a smirk. The bartender approached. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" "Whiskey on the rocks," Jason said. Jordan grinned. "Just a beer for me." They sat down, sipping their drinks, talking about life. Jason had been busy with a high-profile federal case, and Jordan was preparing his team for the upcoming football season. They rarely had time to meet, so tonight was special. But they had no idea that their night was about to take a dark turn. Across the room, Officer Travis Mitchell, a white, off-duty cop, sat in the corner, his eyes scanning the bar like a predator looking for trouble. Then his gaze landed on Jason and Jordan only, and not the two weird-looking guys. His expression hardened. Two black men in expensive suits, laughing and drinking. His mind twisted with hate. He had arrested guys like them before, cocky, well-dressed, thinking they were above the law. Mitchell leaned toward the bartender and whispered, "You see those two? They fit the description of some drug dealers I've been tracking." The bartender hesitated. "You sure? They seem..." "I'm sure," Mitchell snapped. "Call it in." Then he stood up and walked outside, his face tight with purpose. Minutes later, the doors burst open. 3 uniformed officers stormed in. The officers rushed toward Jason and Jordan without hesitation. "Hands behind your back. Now," one of them barked. Jason barely had time to react before his arms were yanked behind him. Metal cuffs snapped around his wrists. Jordan was pushed face first against the bar. "What the hell is this?" Jordan shouted, struggling. Jason remained calm, but his eyes darkened. He knew his rights. "We didn't do anything," Jason said firmly. "What's the charge?" Officer Mitchell stepped back inside, frowning. "You two match the description of wanted drug dealers," he said, his voice dripping with false authority. The crowd watched, some whispering, others too afraid to speak up. No one did anything. Jason steadied his breath. He had handled thousands of legal cases. He knew the law better than most people in this room. With difficulty, he turned slightly in the cuffs and pulled out his wallet. Inside was his federal prosecutor badge. "You're making a mistake," Jason said, flashing his ID. "I work for the U.S. government." Mitchell took the badge, glanced at it, then laughed in Jason's face. "Fake ID," he said casually. Then he slipped the badge into his pocket. Jordan's anger boiled over. "That's a federal badge, you idiot." Mitchell stepped closer, his face inches from Jason's. "I don't care if you think you're some big-shot lawyer," he whispered. "You're just another black thug who thinks he's special." Jason felt his stomach turn. He had seen injustice before, but this was personal. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Jason warned, his voice ice-cold. But Mitchell only frowned. He had all the power now. The officers tightened their grip and started dragging Jason and Jordan toward the exit. Jordan struggled. "Let us go." "Shut up," an officer snapped, shoving him forward. As they were pulled toward the door, Jason scanned the room. Wealthy men and women sat frozen, some avoiding eye contact, others staring in shock. No one said a word. No one dared to interfere, not even the bartender. Jason's mind raced. This was wrong, but this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jason and Jordan sat in the back of the cold, cramped police car, their hands still cuffed behind them. The metal dug into their wrists, but neither of them complained. Jordan fumed, his muscles tense, his face filled with anger. "This is exactly why I hate the system," he muttered under his breath. Same old story. Black men minding their business, and boom, cops throw us in cuffs for nothing. Jason, however, remained quiet. He wasn't angry. He was thinking. His mind raced like a lawyer preparing for a case. He had spent years fighting injustice in the courtroom. But tonight, the law had failed him. Jordan leaned toward him. "Come on, Jay. Say something. You know this is wrong." Jason finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "I know. And I'm handling it." Jordan frowned. "Handling it? Bro, we're literally handcuffed in the back of a police car. What exactly are you handling?" Jason didn't answer. Instead, he shifted slightly, pressing his wrist against his knee. A tiny, nearly invisible button on his smartwatch clicked. Somewhere miles away, inside the White House, a secure phone rang. A man with sharp eyes and a cold, controlled expression picked it up. "This better be important," said their father, James Carter, Chief of Staff to the President of the United States. Jason's voice came through calm but firm. "Dad, we're being unlawfully arrested." There was a brief silence. Then their father's voice came back, dangerously cold. "Where are you?" Jason glanced at the window. The police car was speeding down a dimly lit road, heading to the station. "Officer's name is Travis Mitchell." His father exhaled slowly, a sign that he was barely containing his rage. Then he said just 2 words before hanging up. "Stay calm." In the front seat, Officer Mitchell was having the time of his life. He glanced at Jason and Jordan in the rearview mirror. Jordan clenched his fists. "What exactly did we do, huh? Drink at a bar?" Mitchell chuckled. "You think you're special. You think that fancy suit and that fake badge make you untouchable. Let me tell you something. People like me will always keep people like you in check." Jason and Jordan exchanged a look. Mitchell had no idea what was coming. Suddenly, a loud, urgent voice crackled over Mitchell's police radio. "All units, I repeat, all UNITs, stand down. Release those men immediately. Do not bring them to the station." A confused silence filled the car. Mitchell's hands gripped the wheel tighter. His jaw clenched. "What?" he muttered, grabbing the radio. "Who authorized this?" The voice came back even more urgent. "This order comes from the White House. I repeat, the White House. Let them go now." A chill ran down Mitchell's spine. For the first time that night, fear flickered in his eyes. Jordan smirked. "Something wrong, officer." But Mitchell wasn't about to let 2 black men walk free. Not tonight. He slammed his fist on the dashboard. "Over my dead body," he growled. "They're going to jail. I don't care if God himself calls me." Jason sighed. Wrong answer. Before Mitchell could process what was happening, out of nowhere, a fleet of sleek black SUVs appeared. Their engines roared like lions preparing to attack. The police cars screeched to a halt. Secret Service agents jumped out. The officers in the front seat froze in terror. Mitchell's mouth fell open. This wasn't just a response. This was a full-blown operation. Before anyone could react, the car doors swung open. A man in a black suit yanked Mitchell out like a ragdoll. "Travis Mitchell," the agent asked, his tone ice-cold. Mitchell stammered, yeah. What's happening? The agent leaned in close. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Jason and Jordan were pulled out of the backseat, but not as prisoners. The agents removed their cuffs, helping them stand tall. Mitchell could only watch in horror. The men he had arrested weren't criminals. They were the sons of one of the most powerful men in America. And now, he was the one in trouble. The police car sat frozen in the middle of the road, surrounded by a fleet of black SUVs. The bright headlights bathed the night in harsh white light. The air was thick with tension. The officers in the front seat expected to see Jason and Jordan dragged out, humiliated, maybe even forced to beg for mercy. But that's not what happened. Instead, the Secret Service opened their doors. Step out of the vehicle. The officers hesitated, confused and terrified. Mitchell's face went pale. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. A tall, broad-shouldered Secret Service agent leaned into the car, his cold stare locking onto Mitchell. Officer Travis Mitchell, step out of the vehicle. You're under investigation. Mitchell's body stiffened. Investigation? What the hell are you talking about? The agent didn't blink. Get out. Now. Jason and Jordan were uncuffed immediately. One of the agents helped Jason fix his suit, while another patted Jordan on the shoulder. Jordan stretched his wrists, looking at Mitchell with a slow, satisfied smirk. Tables sure do turn quick, huh? Before Mitchell could protest, another car door swung open with force. A man stepped out, his presence sending chills down Mitchell's spine. James Carter, Chief of Staff to the President of the United States, and father to the two men Mitchell had just tried to frame. He stood tall, his sharp suit crisp, his eyes burning with quiet rage. The kind of rage that didn't explode, it destroyed. He walked up to Mitchell, stopping inches away from him. His voice was low, controlled, and far more dangerous than yelling. You arrested my sons. Mitchell swallowed hard. Sweat formed on his brow. His mouth opened, then closed. Sir, he stammered. I was just doing my job. Jason raised an eyebrow, stepping forward. Your job. Arresting innocent people for no reason. Mitchell snapped back into defense mode. They matched a description. Jason tilted his head. Really? What was the description? Silence. Mitchell's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. The officers who had helped him shifted nervously. They could see it now. Mitchell had just made the biggest mistake of his career. One of the Secret Service agents stepped forward, holding a tablet. Sir, we pulled security footage from the bar. He tapped the screen. A video played. The sound was crystal clear. Mitchell's voice echoed through the night. See those two? Yeah, I'm gonna teach those black kids a lesson. They don't belong here. The footage showed Mitchell leaning over the bar, whispering to the bartender. The look of disgust on his face. Jason and Jordan weren't suspects. They were targets. James Carter's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked from the screen to Mitchell, his expression unreadable. Jordan shook his head, laughing bitterly. Man, you really thought you could get away with this. Mitchell's body trembled. His mind screamed for a way out. I didn't mean. But it was too late. The officers who had helped him took a step back, their faces pale. One of them even opened his mouth to apologize, but an agent shut him down immediately. Mitchell's breathing was shallow. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't supposed to happen. But then, a cold, metal sensation clicked around his wrists. Handcuffs. He gasped. Wait. No, you can't arrest me. I'm a Kiob. One of the Secret Service agents pulled him toward the SUVs. Not anymore. You're not. Mitchell thrashed, his face twisting in horror. I was just doing my job, he screamed. They too you the HAV and criminals. Jason smirked, shaking his head. "No, Officer Mitchell. You're the criminal." Mitchell's shouts faded as he was dragged into the back of the black SUV. The doors slammed shut. For the first time in his life, Mitchell knew what it felt like to be powerless. The remaining officers stood frozen. They were terrified. James Carter finally turned to Jason and Jordan, his expression softening just slightly. "You boys okay?" Jordan grinned. "Oh, we're great now." Jason nodded. "We handled it." James sighed, shaking his head. "I told you, never get arrested." Jordan chuckled. "Next time, I'll let Jason pick the bar." Jason smirked. "Dan right." The Secret Service agents escorted them to one of the SUVs. As they pulled away, Jason looked out the window. Officer Mitchell sat in the back of another SUV, his head in his hands, his career and life destroyed. Jason and Jordan exchanged a look. Justice had been served, and the world would never see them as just another pair of black men in cuffs again. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the world had already changed for Officer Travis Mitchell. The news spread like wildfire. TV screens flashed his mugshot, his once proud uniform stripped away. Headlines scrolled across every major network. "Racist cop arrested for targeting sons of U.S. Chief of Staff." Social media erupted in outrage. The footage from the bar, his words, his smug face, his clear intent to frame Jason and Jordan, went viral. People who had stayed silent for years finally spoke up. "That cop pulled me over last month for no reason. He harassed my brother outside our own house." This was never his first time. Mitchell had spent years abusing his badge. But last night, he messed with the wrong people. Hours after his arrest, Mitchell sat in a dark interrogation room. His hands were shaking. His once polished badge now sat on the table in front of him, cold, useless, and soon to be taken forever. A police commissioner walked in. His face was tight with anger, but his voice was steady. "Officer Mitchell, you are officially suspended without pay, pending an investigation." Mitchell snapped. "You can't do this. This is all a setup." The commissioner's jaw clenched. A setup. He pulled out a folder and slammed it on the table. Inside were reports. Dozens of complaints against Mitchell. Allegations of racial profiling, excessive force, and false arrests. Some had been buried. Some had disappeared. But now, none of that would be ignored. "You should have been fired years ago," the commissioner said. "But now, you're not just losing your badge. You're going to prison." Jason sat at the prosecutor's table, his posture strong, unshaken. Across the room, Mitchell sat in handcuffs, his lawyer whispering in his ear. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, and everyday citizens had all come to see justice served. The charges against Mitchell were read out loud: civil rights violations, abuse of power, and false arrests. Jason stood, his voice clear, his words unshakable. "Officer Mitchell didn't just arrest my brother and me. He used his power to punish people who didn't look like him, people who couldn't fight back." Jason paused, his eyes locking onto Mitchell. "But he messed up. He thought we couldn't fight back either." A murmur spread through the crowd. Mitchell's face was blank. For once in his life, he had nothing to say. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of people gathered. Cameras flashed. Reporters pushed forward. The world wanted to hear what the Carter brothers had to say. Jason stood back, letting Jordan step up to the microphones. Jordan took a deep breath. Then he spoke. "This isn't just about me and my brother." His voice was strong, steady. "This is about every innocent person who's been wrongly accused. Every black man who's been pulled over just because he looked suspicious. Every person who's been thrown into handcuffs before anyone even asked for their name." The crowd listened in silence. "This time, we were lucky," Jordan continued. "We had the power to fight back. But what about the people who don't? What about the ones who never get justice?" He took a deep breath. We're not just here to celebrate a bad cop going to jail. We're here to make sure this never happens again." The crowd erupted in applause. Jason patted Jordan's shoulder. "Nice speech, coach." Jordan smirked. "Gotta motivate the team, right?" Inside his jail cell, Mitchell sat alone. His mind raced. Just a few nights ago, he was on top of the world. A respected officer. A man in control. Now he was just another inmate in an orange jumpsuit. The cell door clanked open. His lawyer walked in, carrying the newspaper. Wordlessly, he tossed it onto the table. Mitchell hesitated, then picked it up. His stomach sank. Front page headline: Racist cop arrested for targeting sons of U.S. Chief of Staff. A career destroyed by a single call. Mitchell's fingers tightened around the paper. His breath came out in a whisper. "I never saw that coming." As Jason and Jordan walked away from the courthouse, their father joined them. "You boys did good," James Carter said. Jordan grinned. "Guess I won't need to call you next time." James smirked. "You better not." Jason looked back at the courthouse. Justice had been served. But this wasn't just about them. This was about every innocent person who never got their chance to fight back. And from this day on, they would make sure no one else suffered the same injustice. This story was intense. What would you have done? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing our viewers from all over the world. Smash that like button if you believe in justice, and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful story like this. Drop a comment below, and let us know if this ending was satisfying, or if you would have wanted a different twist. Stay tuned for more.